Welcome to Life Transformation Radio. This show is all about life transformations and our journey from where we were to why we are doing what we are doing today. We will discuss the hiccups, the roller coasters, and the blood, sweat, and tears that has been poured out while discovering our purpose. It is all about our transformations. Here is your host, Sean Douglas.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to another episode of Life Transformation Radio. I am your host, Master Resilience Implementer, TEDx speaker, business positioning strategist, and international best-selling author, Sean Douglas. This show is currently heard in over 90 countries. So whether it's your first time joining us or you've been listening to us for some time, I want to thank you to those who are listening from around the world. Life Transformation Radio is all about our transformation. Here, we tell the stories of why we're doing what we're doing, highlighting that transformational moment that changed our lives, and how we use it to then transform others and elevate their lives as well. You can listen to us live right here on the Blog Talk Radio Network, Tuesday through Friday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can also join our Facebook group. Search on Facebook for Life Transformation Radio Community, where we interact with the guests and the listeners and continue on with the conversations that we have here on the show. So if you'd like to join our Facebook group, search for Life Transformation Radio Community and go ahead and join that. You can subscribe to the show on any podcast platform that you listen to. We are on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spreaker, Spotify, TuneIn, Overcast, CastBox, the Google Podcasts, and we are available on Pandora as well. Many ways for you to listen to us, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Go to YouTube, and you can search for Life Transformation Radio on YouTube, and you can subscribe to our channel there as well. On the show, my guests are entrepreneurs, speakers, business owners, coaches, podcasters, authors, amazing human beings that are impacting the world around them. And my guest today has done exactly that. If you have any questions for any of the guests that I bring on the show during our live broadcast, go ahead and give us a call at 657-383-1109. Again, the number is 657-383-1109. And with that, please help me welcome to the show my guest for today, award-winning author, real estate consultant, Justin Pogue. Justin, welcome to Life Transformation Radio.
Thanks, Sean. Really glad to be here.
Dude, I'm super pumped to have you on the show, man. I've seen great things from you, heard great things from you, so I think we're going to have a really, really amazing conversation, man. Got a lot of friends in real estate, and I've kind of picked up a couple things along the way. Back in 2016, I was in a real estate podcast, I should say a mastermind. I was in a real estate mastermind, but it really wasn't a real estate. It just so happened that 99% of the people that were in a wealth building mastermind were real estate. So yeah, man, I picked up a couple things along the way.
Excellent.
So the title of this episode is Rental Secrets with real estate consultant Justin Pogue. Justin is an award-winning author and real estate consultant based in San Jose, California. His services are sought after by property management companies, investors, and real estate consulting companies. Fox News, Mercury News, San Francisco, SFGate, Realtor.com, and ApartmentTherapy.com have all featured his insights for the benefit of their audiences. He got his start in real estate by purchasing properties on the Lands Available list in the state of Florida. Since 2003, he has developed and managed apartments, rental homes, and student housing across the United States. He wrote an amazing book called Rental Secrets, which we will definitely get into. But I want you to go to LinkedIn and Facebook, click on those links right there in the show notes, check out his YouTube channel, and if you have a Twitter, go check out Rental Secret. Justin, the first question that I have to ask, man, after reading that and knowing what I know about you, I got to know, man, what is your why? Why do you do what you do?
So I've been in real estate for about 20 years, managing properties, renting properties to people, and I've seen people all up and down with all kinds of all up and down the economic spectrum, different kinds of jobs, backgrounds, histories, all of that. And one of the things that always struck me was the general level of distrust that renters have when they go in and talk to landlords, and just that fear and uncertainty and the pressure that a lot of renters feel. And also that kind of distrust is mirrored from the landlord side as well. It's kind of like if you've ever seen any of those television judge shows, if there's a landlord-tenant dispute, there's typically a lot of fireworks, chairs get thrown at people. People are yelling and screaming at each other. And
yeah.
It's kind of like, why is that? Because honestly, both landlords and renters, they want the same thing. They want to have quality places for people to live. Like, that's the basis for the whole thing. So I actually had this epiphany when I was sitting in the bookstore, and I'm looking at the real estate section because, I'm generally there as a real estate guy. And I see books for owners, managers, investors, but I don't see any books for renters. And which is odd because there's 43 million rental households, and they bring $500 billion to the table every year to float the entire residential rental industry. But there weren't any books for them. And which is odd because you can get advice on how to buy a car or a computer or a refrigerator. And those are pretty minor relative to what you're spending on rent. So my why really is to educate renters so that this entire residential rental industry can work better and more smoothly than it currently is.
I would say that you definitely need to get this into the hands of military people, because a lot of them don't want to buy houses at their duty station. And there's a lot of active duty military personnel that either rents an apartment or rents a house or something. Mm-hmm. So, man, for you, I mean, I'd be trying to figure out how to reach the military people. That's immediately what I see is a need there to educate the young military guys who go and buy a house. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, no, I just got orders overseas. What do I do? I always tell them, dude, rent that out. Dude, that's passive income.
Yeah, absolutely rent that out. And military people have some advantages because, a lot of military people get a housing stipend that they can put toward housing. And if they can buy a rental with that and then rent that property out, that's an advantage that most people don't have when they start looking at investing in real estate.
For sure. Yep. For sure. Yeah, so I just kept thinking, as I was talking to you and everything, I'm like, man, I know so many people. In 2014, we went to go buy a house, and then the day I bought the house, or at least signed the papers, I got orders to Korea. It would have been gone in Korea for a year. I'm like, oh, I'm out of here. I'm not buying a house. That's stupid. Plus, we were living in base housing anyways. So there'd been no point. Well, 3 months later, those orders fell off. They got turned off, and it ended up going. So that I could have bought the house. But it so happens that the 3 months later, there was a hurricane that came through, and the house was in a protected wetland. There was a protected wetland in the back. Well, all of that flooded and sunk the foundation. So the house ended up shifting its foundation.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, thank God I didn't get that house, boy. Holy cow. The whole area was flooded. That whole area is a lowland. Man, it flooded.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Thank God. But these are things that people need to, be aware of, especially if you're military. Even if you're not military, what if my house sinks? What if I'm in Florida and I need to, I want to rent a house, and I do rent the house, and then a hurricane comes and rips the roof off? Who pays for that? What happens to my house? So we get into all kinds of talks about renters insurance and everything else. And yeah, man, it gets crazy.
Yeah, it does get crazy. And the funny thing is that when you're finishing up high school and you're supposedly an adult, there's no class on any of this stuff. There's no class on how to rent a property or what renter's insurance is for, or how you should handle your finances. They're just like, well, you're an adult now. You'll figure it out. Have fun. And it's really a disservice to a lot of our young people who are just starting out in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, I agree. So the show is about transformation, and I'm curious about yours. And everybody always wants to know, how'd you get started? Like, what made you make the shift, right? So talk to us about your transformational moment, man, the one that changed your life and put you on the path to what you're doing today.
So my transformational moment came as I was leaving the first job I had out of college. And I decided that I was going to reinvent myself. I was going to go into graduate school, get my MBA, and I was going to come out as a management consultant. That was my plan. So I got into the school, met up with someone to do mock interviews with, found the company I wanted to interview with, did the interview, got the coveted summer internship and all that. I'm thinking, great, I'm on my way, ready to go. Everything's lining up and coming up roses. And this is around the 2001 timeframe when the dot-com bubble is bursting. And the management consulting industry ended up imploding right along with it. So my 12-week internship got cut to 6. But worse than that, there were people that had already been hired by these companies that they were sending rescission letters to. As in, thank you very much for buying a house near our offices. We no longer need your services. So my timing was just absolutely horrible. In fact, it couldn't have been any worse. And that kind of feeling you get in the pit of your stomach when life just kind of crumples up your plans and tosses them over its shoulder. That's pretty much where
like
I
Mike
was.
Tyson.
Yeah,
like Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan for Mike Tyson to get punched in the face.
Yeah, exactly. So at that point, I got to figure out, what am I going to do next? How am I going to reinvent myself? And it just so happens that right about that time, my mother, who had been a real estate agent for a few years briefly, about 40 years ago, she was learning about how to acquire property by paying the back taxes on properties. So as part of that education, I went with her on a road trip. We were living in California at the time, and we drove down to Florida, and we literally drove county to county in Florida, going to the county recorder's office, looking up the properties that had back taxes on them that we could pay and use this strategy on. Ended up actually buying 3 pieces of property and ultimately flipping those to developers. And that's where I had that shift in my mindset where, like, okay, we can this is real. We can actually do this. And that's what started me down the real estate path. And then from there, we started buying duplexes, fourplexes, apartment buildings, that kind of thing, remodeling them, operating them. And that's where my 20 years of real estate experience came from. It was very much like grassroots from the bottom up.
No kidding. Good way to go, I think. Build a great foundation.
Yeah, because one of the things that I experienced was, since I'm doing it from the bottom up, I got exposed to like choosing properties, financing issues, insurance issues, property management issues, marketing issues, like every area across the spectrum. I ended up getting exposed to. Whereas if I had gone like a corporate route, like your job would have been just property management or just marketing or just finance, and I would have been locked kind of in that silo, which would have made a very different kind of real estate upbringing, if you will, than what I had. And I really kind of cherish that, because seeing all of those pieces really allows you to understand what's going on, why things are happening the way they're happening, and you just get that. You just kind of get that, that view from the 30,000 foot level.
Oh yeah. Yep. Damn, man. Yeah, I think that's a better way to go. I mean, I look at all the businesses that I built, the 4 businesses, and starting out is usually the hardest. Like getting it going seems to be the hardest, but what I found is that if you lay the proper foundations, so I look at it the same way. I love cliche anecdotes or comparisons, hyperbole, like whatever stupid words you want to throw towards it. I also like acronyms. I'm an acronym junkie. But like, I equate building a business to building a house. You can't build a wall. You can't build a roof. You can't put piping in until you have a foundation built.
Absolutely.
Most people, and you'll agree with me, and it's so funny that I'm going to use this example. Most people building a business, and I wonder if it's the same way in the real estate, but most people that build a business automatically put the for sale sign in the yard and the house ain't even damn built yet.
Yeah, the fake it till you make it philosophy.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Like you rented a house, you put the house on the lot, called it your own. Like, nah, man. So I use that a lot. I'm like, man, you already put the for sale sign outside. You ain't even got a business yet. You talk about how you're this awesome business person or you've got this amazing business, but you ain't even got walls. You ain't got a roof. You ain't got windows. You ain't got a front door. Got the for sale sign out there. You selling something, but you ain't got nothing to sell. Like you ain't got no systems. You don't have any like footing. You don't have nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. And usually we find this out like right in the beginning of someone who's coaching with me on like how to build a business or market it or, ask you about your book, like what'd you do for your marketing, all that stuff. And the first thing we do, it's like, what are you selling? What's your for sale sign? And then I'm like, cool. How do you sell that? And we start working ourselves backwards. How can I sell that? We got to have something to sell. Like, what's your systems? Like, what's your follow-up? What's your tasks? And that, to me, is why 90% of businesses fail in the first 5 years because they have no systems. They have no long-term vision. They're in it to get money real quick and fake it till you make it and front all over everybody on social media, and then that's it. And then they die away. It's like podcasting. You were looking for podcasts. Some of the episodes that haven't been up since 2017, 2018, they haven't uploaded an episode. It's because they pod faded out. They quit. They don't want to do it anymore. Which, I'm not faulting them for that. There's probably many reasons why they do that. But most will quit in the first 7 to 10 episodes because it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you just make it look easy, but it's hard.
I got systems. That's why. We went over those systems, right? I mean, we went over those systems. Like, I have systems for everything, man. I'm a systems dude. I know exactly, like, I know the numbers. I know what I got to do. I know the steps. I know what should happen. I mean, most people don't even have that. They haven't even thought that far ahead. So, yeah, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, but also along with that is there's a lot of people are lacking in the kind of the authenticity. Like, have you really been there? Have you really done that? Are you bringing real experiences to the table? Have you done the research and all of that? And is what you're sharing real and authentic? Because I think a lot of times, and I experience this too, when I'm receiving marketing messages, I question the authenticity of what I'm getting or of the message that this person is sending out.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm like skeptical, but I'm definitely looking for that authenticity. You know, like where are you coming from? That's what I want. Like, I want to know the place you're coming from when I hear things, right? When I hear somebody's message or their marketing, whatever, like where am I coming from? And I kind of want to know their mindset. So yeah, I'm kind of weird like that.
Absolutely.
So you had this transformational moment. There was this moment in your life, and you took advantage of it. I think most people will sit in that moment and go, "Man, I could do this," and they'll think about it. And they were supposed to do something, or they could have done something, or they should have done something, but they don't. They get stuck. But you didn't. So how have you taken that transformational moment and elevated the world around you?
So from that trip to Florida and all of that, ultimately got up to 72 units of rental property that, you know, I was managing and invested in and all of that, operating those. And then I decided, well, you know, I've kind of had this homegrown kind of experience in property management. So let me hire a property management company to manage my stuff. I'm going to go work for a corporation and see if they have any other tips and tricks or tools for me to use. And that was when I went back to California, worked for a company managing, what was it, like 200 some odd apartments for them. And basically came to find out that they had the same tools I had. The tools were a little fancier. They cost a little more money. They were a little more technologically sophisticated. But when it comes down to it, property management is really a basic function. There's a lot of moving parts in it, but it really comes down to the people and the relationship with the renters that are living there. So after having that experience, I'm like, well, I still had this kind of what we talked about at the beginning of the show, which was like this idea of the animosity between renters and landlords. And I experienced it, you know, managing my own properties, but I also experienced it working for that corporation. So that was still gnawing at me. And that really has kind of led me down this path to, you know, kind of write this book, Rental Secrets, and really share like what's going on behind the scenes that renters typically don't see, that they really need to know, so they can get the best out of this experience, not only for themselves, but for the landlord as well, that they're renting from. And I didn't write it from the standpoint of like a renter's rights or a legal perspective. I wrote it more from a market perspective. This is how we can work together so we can both achieve what our goals are. And that's really how I'm pulling from that previous real estate experience and kind of putting it into a perspective that people can actually use on a daily basis out in the real world.
Love it. Love that, man. Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the practicality, man. I like to get into some meat here. Like, so you wrote the book, Rental Secrets. So tell people about the book, where can they get it, and why they should read it.
Well, the book's available everywhere. I mean, Amazon and all usual suspects, also at rentalsecrets.net. But the book is really about the power that renters have in the landlord-tenant relationship that they don't know they have because they've never been taught. And the basis of it is that landlords actually have problems. Believe it or not, most landlords are not sipping umbrella drinks on their yacht in the Caribbean. They're real people who may own one or two properties, who have real problems that are going on in their lives. And renters really have the power to kind of help solve some of those problems. And that power stems from, if you as an individual are in any way handy in terms of helping to repair stuff, that can be really useful to a landlord, especially a smaller one where you're not calling them every 5 minutes for every little thing that's going wrong in the property. That can be really helpful to them and give them peace of mind. And peace of mind and lower stress is actually worth dollars in terms of what you pay for rent. Yeah. Another thing that a lot of people don't think about is people think about competition, for instance, right? They think about, I'm going to rent something. I'm competing against all the other renters that are out there. And yes, there is some truth to that. But there's another side to that competition, and it's that the landlords are all competing for you to be their renter. And they pay big bucks for that. If you've ever seen any of those people on the street corner with those now leasing signs or lease here signs, those people are called, that's called human directional advertising. It's a horrible name. I hate the name, but it costs about $1,000 a week to have somebody on the street corner for a few hours a day. So they're spending big money to attract your attention. So understand that landlords are actually in competition for you as well. And part of the reason why they're in that competition is because if the apartment is vacant, they don't make any money. But what's worse, the money that they lost because it was vacant, they can never get back again. It's gone forever. So that gives them this, what I call a bias towards action. So if there's somebody who's qualified, who's ready to go, and they make an offer, even if it's slightly less than what you're asking for, they're going to consider it, because leaving it vacant for another month really is not in their best interest. So the book really goes into these different sources of power that renters have, and that's really why people should actually go and look into the book and actually buy the book, because this isn't taught anywhere. It's not. There's no high school class. There's no community college course. None of that exists. So you really walk into that rental situation at a disadvantage, because guess what? The landlord's been doing this a while. They know the ins and outs and all the tricks and all of that. You don't, because you're either starting out and you haven't rented before, or you may have rented a few apartments over the course of your lifetime. They do it every day, day in, day out. So the book really starts to correct that informational imbalance.
Mm-hmm. Very cool, man. I like it. I had a house that we rented in Utah when I was stationed at Hill Air Force Base, and I think it was like $1,000 deposit and some other money, whatever. We took really good care of the house. We actually upgraded the house. We'd ask them, like, hey, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? And some renters will be like, oh yeah, we'll just take like $100 off the rent, or yeah, just take, whatever. Hey man, this, like the AC unit went out, man. I'll pay for it. Just take it off the rent. It's like, yeah, cool, man, no problem. So I'll pay for it right now. It'll come back to me on the rent, whatever. So I did that a bunch of times. Lived there for almost a year, and took really good care of the house. Repainted the wall. I mean, we really did a lot of cool stuff to the house. So we're moving out. He looks at the house. He's like, man, this place is great. I'm like, yeah, that's great. I love that you like the house, man. I love it. So here's my forwarding address, and you can just mail me a check if you want. I don't really care, for the deposit. He's like, what? For the deposit? He's like, no, I don't give back the deposit. I'm like, that's literally the definition of a deposit. Like, I'm giving you a deposit so that I don't wreck your house, so that I get my money back when the house. And he was like, I don't give deposits back. I'm like, well, that's what the deposit's for, so I want my deposit back. Well, and I upgraded your house. Like we did a bunch of cool stuff to it. But yeah, man, I want my deposit back. He's like, I've never given a deposit back. I'm like, well, I'm not stupid. And maybe the people who rented from you are and don't know how this actually works. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, man, I want my deposit back. He's like, well, you're not getting your deposit. I'm like, then I'll see you in court, dude. I will take your ass to court. So he's like, well, let me think about it. I'm like, there's nothing to think about. The deposit's mine. Legally, the deposit is mine. It is in the contract, number one. Number two, it is a law that you cannot keep someone's deposit unless you can show somebody that you've damaged, whatever. It comes out of the deposit. That's what it's for. It's a security for you and me. He gave me $200 out of that deposit back and said that like some rocks were moved and there was like a dent in the wall on like the corner. You know how like you move stuff, you like nick a corner. He's like, not, and then he went and like nitpicked everything. Oh, the carpet's old in this part of the house. I need to replace the carpet. I'm like, oh, hell no. I told him, like, dude, I'm going to sue the brakes off of you, dude. And plus I'm military. So I'll make sure that nobody ever rents from you again who's military. Because the guy wanted to rent predominantly military. So yeah, man, he gave me like just over $200.
Yeah. All of the improvements that you did to the house that he agreed with, I would send him a bill for all of that, including that AC system. And I guarantee it'll come up to more than $1,000 that he owes you.
Sure. Sure. No, absolutely. But yeah, man, I was just like, oh man. So of course, we have a housing office on base, and you just go to the housing office and be like, hey, I'm having a problem with my landlord. So of course they call that guy and they have it out with that guy, but that's what's great about the military is you have people like there to help you out and stuff, So
yeah, and
so
actually, that story brings up a couple things. Brings a couple things up in my mind. One is that all these people become landlords in different ways. But when you go to these different like real estate seminars and all of that, they typically talk about all the beautiful things about owning property, like appreciation and cash flow and the tax benefits and all of that. They rarely actually talk about how to run a property, what needs to happen day in and day out to make a property function. And part of that is how you manage deposits. So there's some educational gaps on the landlord side as well. That's the first thing. The second thing that comes to mind is, and this was when you were talking about how the carpet's old and that kind of thing. There's this kind of basic accounting concept called useful life. And it applies to real estate. So like the useful life of a carpet is about 5 years.
Right.
So if that carpet is older than 5 years when you move out, you shouldn't have to pay anything to replace that carpet. If it's brand new and you move out after a year and it's damaged, okay, yeah, you need to pay for it, part of that. But if it's older than 5 years, you shouldn't have to pay anything for that because the useful life is over. I mean, it wasn't supposed to last that long anyway. It should have been replaced long before that. And most people who are renting don't really know about that. So when they go into this conversation about the deposit and how much they should get back, they don't have any idea how old the paint is. They don't have any idea how, when the carpet was put down. So the landlord will, if those things are damaged, the landlord will put that against their deposit. And in some cases, that shouldn't actually go down that way.
I think that's a very good piece of information that everybody needs to listen to. And I think it's contained in your book, right?
Yes, I do cover that. I do cover that in the book. I cover that in more detail. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect segue to talk. To cover those topics, man. Because, man, especially now, like COVID stuff, states passing, anti-eviction laws and like all that stuff is just crazy right now to be a landlord and a renter. Like it's not a good time.
Well, right now landlords are really discovering how valuable a quality relationship with their renters really are. I mean, renters are not like milk cows that you just milk and pull resources out of, and that's just it. I have another real estate story. So my grandfather, on my mother's side, this was back in the 1960s. He would actually go out and find houses where he could assume the mortgage, because back then a lot of mortgages were assumable, and the owner was having whatever financial difficulties they were having. So he'd go in and assume the mortgage and then start renting property to people. But he didn't take care of the property. When they called to have something repaired, he blew them off. When they had some other kind of issue, he didn't really give them the time of day. And so ultimately, we had when I started in real estate, I had to start from zero, because the property that he had acquired, he ultimately lost because he didn't value that relationship. And that same issue is coming up today with this COVID situation. Is renters are trying to get out of cities, are trying to figure out how to get out of their leases. They're deciding not to lease with you again for various different reasons. But the better your relationship with your tenants, the more likely they are to stay and actually sign a new lease with you and keep your building occupied. And from the landlord perspective, not only is it that you want, that's not the only reason. It's not just that you want them to stay and continue paying your rent. In your mortgage, in the landlord's mortgage, there are covenants in there about amount of occupancy that's required, amount of income that's required to maintain the covenants that were in the mortgage agreement. And that's something that a lot of people don't know, especially on the renter side. So it's really important for them to keep those relationships as positive as possible, so they can retain as many residents as possible, so that to solve problems that they're having on their end.
Right. That makes sense, man. Yeah, I think that before anybody gets into rental properties, whether they're investing or getting or going to get into renting a house, I think they need your book. Again, man, I think you've solved a huge problem and kind of peeled back the curtain a little bit. So tell them again where they can get that book.
So Rental Secrets is available all over the place, including Amazon, Amazon.com, and various bookstores. And it's a really powerful book, not only for renters, but also for landlords, because there's a lot of information gaps on the landlord side as well. In fact, a number of the testimonials on my website are from realtors, landlords, property investors who really value the book from the standpoint of, how do I make my job as a landlord easier?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, just this year, we've seen that play out in many different forms.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
last year, people got into real estate last year because the economy was so good. We're going to get into real estate, and then pandemic happens, and they got crushed.
Yeah. But there are also opportunities. That there are opportunities that are going to come about because of that. Because there is going to be a lot of shifting around within the real estate market, and properties that previously were commercial and retail their purpose is going to need to shift.
Of course, look at the malls.
Yeah. Oh,
I've
absolutely.
seen people take abandoned malls and make high-end apartments out of them.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like condos, like indoor condos, like they live in a mall. They've turned those suites or those stores or whatever, they've knocked out some walls or whatever they've done with them, and they've actually made like little mini houses or whatever, apartments, whatever, put in kitchens, put in bathrooms, whatever, and renovated an entire mall to make these high-end luxury like apartments.
Absolutely. And whose high-end luxury apartments come with, their own food court built right in.
That'd be a pretty cool nursing home, like an old mall, because you have all them food courts and all them stoves and like all that. Like, I'm just thinking, like, that'd be a pretty cool like nursing home.
Yeah, and that's a whole we could do a whole another hour on senior housing and setting that up.
Right.
That's a whole animal unto itself.
For sure. Well, I appreciate you spending some time with us, man. And let's leave a message for the listeners. What would you tell them if they're listening to us right now? What would you tell them?
What I would definitely tell them is being a renter is not a situation where you have to feel like you're powerless, or you have to feel like the landlord is the one in charge of your rental situation. Landlords need you just as much, if not more, than you need them. So don't be afraid to negotiate. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want, whether it's a $25 off the rent, or whether you're looking for an extra parking space, or whether you're looking to have washer and dryer added, into the apartment for you. Ask for those things, because you don't know what that landlord is dealing with on the other side. You don't know. They might owe the IRS a bunch of money, and have to pay by the next day. They're not going to tell you that. But when you ask and you start negotiating with them and speaking to them in their language, that's where you get the power to actually better your situation and get into quality housing that you're looking for.
Yeah. Yep. Love it, man. Thanks again, man, for coming on the show. I think we've touched on quite a few topics, and heading into 2021, man, I think it's going to be even more prevalent, because the rental protection, the eviction protections and all that. Sure, the renter is protected from being evicted, but who's paying the landlord's mortgage now?
Yeah.
So now you've taken it from the renter, but you've screwed the landlord. So now he's got to find a way to come up with man, it's all kinds of crazy. It is just nuts right now. But man, I wish people would reach out to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If people want to drop me an email, it's justin@rentalsecrets.net. I'm more than happy to field questions from your audience and all that. Oh, and I also have a free ebook that I'm giving away called Apartment Search Secrets, and they can get that at rentalsecrets.net/free.
Oh, cool. That's awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah, guys, go get that. I know a lot of friends that buy apartments, rehab them, and then fix them up. What I want to do is I want to get a nice apartment building in a nice part of the neighborhood or whatever, and turn it into an Airbnb apartment building, luxury staycation type places, right? So I think of a timeshare, think of a resort. That's what I want to do. You Airbnb Monday through Thursday for one price, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday for another price, and just have it high end with love making jacuzzi tubs in the bathroom, and nice finishes and countertops, and have an amazing pool, and I look at it that way as I'll get, let's say it's $1,000 a week. So instead of getting $1,000 a month, I'm getting $1,000. I've just quadrupled my income just by making it an Airbnb space rather than a living space.
Yeah, there are a number of people doing similar things where they're taking a house and they're actually renting the bedrooms. So they're renting it by the room, and they're generating higher income that way.
Yep, absolutely. Why wouldn't you do that? Absolutely. So, again, man, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's absolutely been phenomenal. Lots of great information, man, and I wish you the best for the rest of 2020.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I'm sure you'll have a great 2022. But like all of us, I will be celebrating the ringing in of 2021 with much glee and happiness.
Oh, yeah. Thank God this is over.
Right?
Oh, man, what a year. Awesome. Life Transformation Radio listeners, an amazing guest impacting the world around him. If anything has resonated with our conversation today with Justin Pogue about rental secrets, please connect with them. LinkedIn, Facebook links, right there in the show notes. Go check out his YouTube link and check him out on Twitter. With that, I close the show by saying live your brand. Find opportunities every day to live out the core values that you hold deep in your heart. And I call this living your brand. So until next episode, live a great life.